Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris back again. A double shot of Symphony X as we cover Underworld, their latest release from July 24th, 2015. So celebrating its 10th anniversary. I am really looking forward to talking about this album. I don't know that we've ever talked about this album offline, online, or any other way. So this will be very interesting to say the least. But before we talk all things Symphony X yet again, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. I can't believe that they have not released an album in 10 years. Like, when you said the latest album from Symphony X, and then I'm like, yeah, this came out 10 years ago. So, I am really looking forward to having this discussion. I went out of my way to not say anything to you this week about this album whatsoever. So, I wanted to keep this conversation feeling fresh. So, I didn't say anything, but I'm going to ask you this, and I think I asked you this offline, but is there like something that you go to when you just need like a mental boost or like a little bit of like a little bit, I don't know if adrenaline's the right word, but maybe just like a little bit of just like a little bit of, you're having a rough week at work or whatever, and you just need something to either like get you through the doldrums or make you feel better. I mean, it should come to no surprise to anybody that for me, that's Power Quest. So every now and again, I listen to their entire discography in order, and I did that this week. So I busted out this mug. I thought it would be appropriate for the occasion, but
Nice.
That for me, along with, Rainseed / Majestica, and of course Halloween, those are like three of those bands where for me, I put that stuff on, Sabotage, and Green Day, Pearl Jam, bands like that, the Monkees, like it can get me out of funk, and I think that that's one of the great powers and joys of music. But I was curious if you had bands like that you kind of go to for a little bit of a boost.
I think I have, and I think it's also changed over the years depending on a lot of different factors. Now I don't know if it's like bands and discographies as so much like specific albums that I find to be like comfort food. So I could, if I'm in a bad mood and I put on Operation Mindcrime, I'm immediately happy. If I'm looking for something a little more tranquil and peaceful, I'll go to like The Dark Third by Pure Reason Revolution, one of my all-time favorites. So I think that those two stand out. Ironically enough, I don't go back to some of my all-time favorites like a Halloween or a Dream Theater or something like that, and I'm not sure why, because in theory I guess that would scratch the itch or put me in a good mood just because I love that stuff, but maybe it's just because I don't know. I honestly I can't even give you a reason. But
you're
those
saving
two
it for the
podcast,
and I appreciate that.
There you go. Exactly.
At least with Power Quest, we talked about all of their albums already, so like it's not. I'm not like getting ahead of myself for podcast purposes with listening to them. And so, it's just, yeah, I mean, like I had mentioned to you that like that hour where they played at Prague Power, like opening on, I think Friday, was like the happiest I've ever been in a music setting. And like, it's just like, it brings back just all these great memories and meeting the band and all of them being so cool. And, and it's funny because it takes me all the way back to like you were the one who I think sent me far away back in 05 or 06. And you were like, you got to listen to this track or whatever. And that like began the whole thing. Like,
that was when you were kind of moving out of your metal phase too, which is the ultimate irony that clicked as you were kind of drifting away from the genres. Kind of ironic timing in that sense. It wasn't like I sent it to you in 1999 or something like that.
Right. And I think that it was like through that, it sparked my interest in going to Prague Power in 2009 because they were supposed to play. And so like, I think through that band, it helped me rediscover my love of metal. And I think I talked about that like when we, did discuss Power Quest in full and interviewed Steve Nash. And it's just such a huge part of my, like love of music. And I think part of the fact that they're like not as well known as like an Ed Guy or a Gamma Ray kind of makes it feel a little bit more intimate, like a little bit more like it's, a small club or whatever. So I just thought I would share that because between that and this Symphony X album, that's pretty much the majority of stuff that I listened to this week. But I also listened to the new Halloween again, but this time we actually got the hard copy of the album instead of the streaming version. So the audio quality was markedly better. I will say though, spoiler alert, I don't know that this is going to be my album of the year. I think it's good, but it's just I don't think it's going to reach the heights that the previous album that I gave a 9.5 to at the time, and I stick by that. Going back and listening to it, I mean, it might be a little bit weighted because of just the timing and hearing Kisk and Kai together with the band again for the first time. So there's a little bit of timing, I think, gave that rating a little bit of a boost. But I just think that the songwriting is a little bit less than on this one. But again, I've listened to it like 3 or 4 times. I'm going to listen to it a lot more. I'm sure we're going to do a deep dive on this album in August, closer to the release date. So I'm curious to see where we both land on it. But I did listen to that again yesterday, and I did listen to the new Stardust album, which I know the both of us were very much looking forward to. And this is another one where it's following a really, really strong album. Was it your album of the year when it was released, or it was high, right? It was high up.
Yeah, it was. I believe it was my album of the year. I actually went back and listened to that earlier this week because I was just kind of getting myself ready for the new release, and I realized I still really like the album. I don't know if it's quite as amazing as I thought it was. Like, I don't know if it would be my album of the year if I went back, but I'd have to listen to everything that came out that year. But it's still excellent stuff. And the new album features Ross Jennings from Haken. There's a lot of interesting stuff on here. I have not heard it yet. I plan on listening to it this weekend. I'm curious what your initial reaction was and how it kind of compares after one listen to the prior release.
Well, if you were looking for a way to link Halloween to Stardust, I'll try here. Halloween's last album, which was their self-titled album, was both of our album of the year it came out. Stardust's previous album, Strangers, in 2020, was your album of the year. It was my ranked number 7 for me. So collectively, we both enjoyed it a lot. So this new album, Souls, I think had some pretty high expectations. On first listen, I will say I don't know if it's going to meet the expectations of the previous album, but it is very good. I enjoyed hearing Ross's vocals on 2 of the 3 parts of Touch of Life. It's not a terribly long album. It's only about 41 minutes long, so it was an easy listen. I listened to it yesterday morning before I dug back into Symphony X, and I'm looking forward to going back and listening to this a few times and hearing your thoughts on it. But I did get a chance to at least listen to it once. And yeah, I think there's a few more newer albums I need to get to, but I look forward to doing so. And again, like I've beaten the drum on just how many exciting releases are still yet to come. One of which is from Amorphous, which we also received a promo for. Haven't listened to that yet, but I'm looking forward to that. They are always, as you say, the model of consistency, always releasing really strong albums. So I'm looking forward to that. We also got the Primal Fear promo. So at least the one single I heard from that was promising. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, we still have most of the second half of 2025 to get through. And I have to say, as of right now, Halloween is not my album of the year. That could change, but we will see. As of right now, there are a number of albums I have ranked ahead of it, honestly. So, and albums I've listened to less times, honestly. So
you got to go back and do the comparison now.
Yeah, without a doubt. It does sound like we will not be getting a new Sabotage album this year, so that won't muddy the waters even more in second half of 2025. Album of the year watch for 2026, potentially, but we will see. But I know you have quite a bit that you want to talk about that you listen to, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to start with something that was a complete shock to me. I don't even know if you're aware of this, but the band Spirit Box was on Jimmy Kimmel Live about 2 weeks ago. Did you hear about this?
Nope, I did not.
This is a band that, like, I mean, we've talked about them in different capacities and whatnot. They don't have a ton of material, but they've obviously blown up if they're on national TV at this point. I and what was even more interesting is that the song they played on the show was a song called Soft Spine. And let me tell you something, it is not a ballad. I was shocked that they would pick such a heavy song for like a big major, national broadcast type of thing. I was just really surprising to me, but kudos to them to sticking to their guns and really just kind of coming out with a bang on this. If you haven't seen it, I'll try to post it this week. I just think the video is worth watching. It's really something else. And speaking of something else, another band that I was not expecting to hear new music from, and that was Green Carnation. They came out with a new song called In Your Paradise. It got mixed reviews from a lot of folks that we know, at least in our circle and whatnot. I thought the song was really good. I happened to really enjoy the single. I thought it was just as good as the last album, maybe even a touch better. But their new album, A Dark Poem Part 1, The Shores of Melancholia, comes out September 5th, 2025, which ironically I think is like the day before we see them in Atlanta, or so it might even be the day of the album coming out. So new music.
I would expect to hear some of the newer songs when we see them live, but based on the title of that album, it looks like it's going to be a real upbeat foray into their prog metal, dealings with A Dark Poem, The Shores of Melancholia. I am. That's what I'm going to listen to. I think when I need a boost, when I'm done with Power Quest, I'm going to listen to that.
That's going to be a hell of a takedown.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I might pet a dog and listen to Green Carnation and see which one wins over. The depression or the excitement.
Nice. I can totally see that. But honestly, even this song itself, even though it was kind of melancholy, it was really, really, really good. So something to keep an eye on. And one other band I wanted to mention, a band out of Texas whose last album I really enjoyed was a band called Anova Skyway. They're a prog metal / prog rock / kind of alt rock thing that they have going on, or alt metal as they say. Really good stuff, but they came out with a new single called Ghost in My Head. It came out last month, but I just had no idea that they were releasing new material, so this was a very pleasant surprise for me just to hear new stuff from them. I trust that this will be on their next album. I'm not sure when it's coming out, but I will be keeping an eye out for it just because I really enjoyed their last album, so I want to give this new one a listen just the same. And as we kind of pivot here to Symphony X, last week you picked what I would call maybe the most unheralded classic in their entire discography, talking about Twilight and Olympus. And, we had talked about doing kind of like a Metal Exchange double in some time in the near future. And I just thought the stars aligned for me to pick Underworld, A, because it's quite the contrast from Twilight and Olympus. B, as we talked about earlier, it's their newest album. And C, it's its 10-year anniversary, so the time was just really, really perfect for this selection. Do you remember hearing this album when it first came out in 2015, or what did you like? Were you looking forward to it? Had you kind of written the band off at this point? Like, what was your headspace like 10 years ago? Because I have vivid memories of this, and I'm just curious if you shared the same kind of experience that I did.
According to my iTunes, I listened to this album quite a bit when it came out. Going back and listening to it, though, a lot of it I just didn't really remember that well. I may have just listened to it when it came out and then didn't. And then I think when the band played around here last year, I probably went back and listened to a handful of tracks that were on the current set list. But there was one song that I remembered really, really well, and they played it live, and I was excited to hear it. But honestly, this felt new to me this week listening to it. At the time that it came out, I don't know that I was necessarily excited about it because the previous album I thought had its moments, but I thought that it was a little bit bloated because it was a 2-disc situation. There were quite a few songs. I know, I think there were 11 songs, but some of them were quite long on Iconoclast. I know there was like a short version of the album and then like an extended version of the album. I had always listened to the extended version of the album. There were songs I really liked. Dehumanized, Children of a Faceless God, the title track, The End of Innocence. There were some really good songs on the album. And then there were some other songs that I honestly do not even remember. So I think that, it was kind of a mixed bag for me. I think also that was around the time they headlined Prague Power the last time. So I was kind of getting prepped for that as well by listening to some of the newer material. So I think when Underworld was released, I remember hearing a lot of good things about it, but I don't think I was super excited about it. I'm sure I grabbed it immediately because at the end of the day, I'm still a fan of this band. But I have to say, like, since the Odyssey, I mean, they lost me a little bit with Paradise Lost. I don't remember listening to it a ton, although Eve of Seduction, one of my all-time favorite Symphony X songs. Set the World on Fire and Serpent's Kiss are two songs that the band continues to play live pretty often, but I didn't listen to that album a ton, and I'm sure we'll go back and listen to that at some point. That's probably the Symphony X album I know the least outside of the debut. So I have to say, though, this took me by surprise. I enjoyed Underworld a lot more than I thought I was going to, and it took a handful of listens to get there. Like the first 2 or 3 times I was just kind of like, okay, this is like, modern Symphony X. But the more I listened to it, the more I started to hear little nods to the old days. And I thought the songwriting was excellent. The production was fantastic. Russell sounded awesome. All these guys are absolute musical pros. So musically, it was phenomenal. So I ended up enjoying this way more than I thought I was going to, and I'm really glad that you chose it. And I think that it's going to make for a really interesting counterpoint to Twilight in Olympus that came out in 1998 that we discussed last week, because the band has really changed quite a bit since then.
Yeah, I remember when this album came out, about 2 months before the album came out, Nevermore, the first main track, was released as a single. And I remember thinking at the time, I don't love this track. I didn't love the last couple of albums before it. And I basically wrote the album off. I listened to it a number of times, but it really didn't click for me at all. And then I don't think I've listened to it in probably close to 10 years, right? Like it was just, I mean, I heard some of the songs live, but like it just never registered for me. So I was really kind of doing this for myself in many ways to see what it would be like to go back and listen to this thing over and over again. I was also pleasantly surprised this week because as someone who had kind of written the band off and just wanted to go back and play the old shit, as we say, there's some really good stuff on this material, on this album, and surprisingly so, because I forgot 90% of the album. I was really only intimately familiar with 2 tracks, Nevermore being one of them. And I have to say, although it's better, it's not one of my favorite tracks. And then Without You, which I think is a stellar tune. And so that was the second single. And then everything else was kind of listening to it fresh. I mean, it came back to me quickly, but it was a very interesting week because I just wasn't expecting what happened. And I'll get into it when we talk about it in depth. But yeah, you hit on a couple of things. The production on this album is absolutely stellar. And this was something that came up in our Patreon group chat. Charles had gone back and listened to some of the older material, and he thought that the production was not that good. And while I respectfully disagree, I think it's a different production. Those older albums don't have that punchiness that this album does. Every instrument on Underworld is clear. Every instrument gets a chance to shine, and the way it's mixed is fantastic. And I do enjoy that punchiness that comes along with it, because it's not punchy where everything gets kind of mushed together. It's very, very, very clear. It's just in your face and loud and just heavy, I guess would be the word. I was very impressed by the mix. And now, as a result, I have to go back and listen to Paradise Lost, and I have to go listen to Iconoclast. But I am in like Symphony X mode right now. And this week, maybe even more so than Twilight, because I knew what that was. But I've completely done a 180 on this album. I mean, completely. And so, like, selfishly, I'm very happy that we did this. And again, nothing that people don't already know, but Russell Allen on vocals, Michael Romeo on guitars, Michael Pinella on keyboards, Michael LaPond on bass, the hat trick of Michaels, and Jason Rulo on drums. You know, the classic Symphony X lineup that's been together now for several years. And as an aside, they are putting new material out as well. I don't know when that album is set to drop, whether it's next year or whatnot, but I am curious to hear what that album is going to sound like, because in my mind, when it was all said and done this week, this album, Underworld, was really a blend of the new Symphony X with certain callbacks to the old stuff, which I was shocked that I was hearing. And at the same time, I just didn't remember it at all.
Yeah, like I think you hit on all the notes there. Like this was really, like, I know this wasn't the ultimate goal, but if the ultimate goal was to get the both of us more excited about seeing this band headline Prague Power in about less than 2 months, mission accomplished, because I'm not as dreading hearing the newer songs as I was. I think this definitely, I'm always going to prefer that trio of albums that we've discussed. That's always going to be the pinnacle for me. And timing is a big part of it too. That's, those were those first 3 albums that came out by this band while I became a metal fan. But, this is definitely boding well. But that said, like, I saw them a year ago and they played a handful of songs from this album, and maybe because I didn't recognize the songs at the time, like I didn't really feel too strongly about it. It could have just been the mood I was in or whatever. I'm definitely gonna be checking out their set at Prague Power, no doubt, because they always just put on such a great show, like just such quality musicians. And Russell is just an outstanding live vocalist. And I'll never forget the first time I saw him with Trans-Siberian Orchestra and was like, what is that? Russell? Like, there had to be such a small amount of people in the crowd that were like, oh, it's the singer from Symphony X. Like, everybody else was like, oh, wow, where'd they get this guy? He's Broadway. Like, he just, he brought, like, not just the incredible vocals from a technical technical point of view, but just his stage presence is so effervescent and it's so infectious. And so, like, I thought he was such a perfect fit for that production. My interest in their set has definitely increased in the last week due to listening to this album. And if they happen to sprinkle in some of the older tunes, for the diehard fans, I think that'll just be a perfect blend. I had noticed that they, have been playing Out of the Ashes again. And honestly, like, if I heard that song live, it probably would forgive, like, even if they played all of Iconoclast as the rest of the set list. But, I wouldn't, if they want to, like, throw in a Smoke and Mirrors or, a Fool's Paradise or one of those older tracks that I love, I won't complain. But I'm a little less down on the mix of songs. It's more so, my biggest complaint really is just the lack of representation of Twilight and Olympus songs, because they do play songs from Odyssey and New Mythology Suite and Divine Wings in particular. It just feels like, I get, like, kind of skipping over the first 2 albums just because they're a little bit more rough or raw than Divine Wings and things that followed. But I'm just flabbergasted at like the missing love for Twilight and Olympus. Go back and listen to last week's episode. We both were big fans of it, and there's some, in my opinion, some of the best material the band ever recorded is on that album.
Yeah, I think they suffer from a little bit of that Camelot sameness. It's not that they don't play some old songs here and there. It's just they always play the same ones. And to that end, even with the newer material, they kind of pick the songs they're going to play, and they don't really venture out and play anything different. I think I'd be more I guess I'm more hopeful that they mix it up and they sprinkle in some songs that maybe we haven't heard in a while. And while I love Out of the Ashes, I'd be very happy with In the Dragon's Den or something like that. If you're going to play just play something a little bit different. And I guess even with this material, I saw them on 70,000 Tons of Metal twice earlier this year. So I'll actually see them 3 times this year. I think that chinks in the armor started to form then, because I heard some songs during those set lists where I'm like, wow, this is much better than I remembered it. But even still, their set list hasn't really changed. It's been pretty static for a while. So here's hoping for something that's a little bit of a surprise, but time will tell. We're about 2 months away or whatnot.
Yeah, and with like so many changes in the lineup, like this Symphony X is kind of like by default gone up the list for me for bands I'm looking forward to, just because there's so many bands I'm just not familiar with at this point. And I don't know that I'm really going to have the time to get familiar with the, November's Dooms of the world and whatever. So like it just may be a matter of, I might not see as much, and I might just pop in for the stuff that I really want to see. I don't know if it's going to be as much of a marathon for me as it was the last couple of years, but we'll see. I mean, sometimes I get to that venue and I find it very difficult to leave because there's just so many people that I love seeing, and it's easier to just sit there and listen to a band that even if you don't know that well, they're going to be good. And that happened to me quite a bit, last year. I think of Soen in particular, a band that I really wasn't that psyched about seeing, and ended up really, really enjoying their set. Same with Leprous. A lot of the prog bands I thought really brought it last year. So, yeah, we'll see. I've given up on the whole planning the schedule ahead. It's just if you had asked me, are you going to be in the venue for 95% of the bands last year, I would have been like, I'll be lucky if I'm there for 65%. And I sure enough, I stuck around for pretty much all of it. And same with the year before. So we'll see. There's a lot to look forward to in spite of all of the drop-offs. Glenn's lineup for next year, I know, is a big draw to hear that for the first time. So lot to look forward to, and I'm excited. But now Symphony X adds a little bit more to that. It's just the unenviable position of being that last band on day 4, where everybody's just kind of slogging at that point, and so you really need that fourth headlining band to really bring it and to really kick everybody's energy up. I think for me, the ultimate example of that was John Oliva's Pain performing Streets after a long 4 days of bands. It was the perfect last set, because I think emotion just carried me through that, through my exhaustion. I was just just standing there on the floor agape, watching the maestro do his thing. So it's always interesting to see that last band, and if they really try to keep everybody's energy up, because God knows everybody's pretty much shot at that point.
Yeah, well said. It's going to be very interesting, to say the least. And if you're a member of our Patreon, you're going to get to hear our Dream Symphony X set list later this month as one of our bonus episodes. And obviously, we're going to have a Prog Power discussion next month on the Patreon. So if you are a member, thank you. And if you are not, consider joining. The links obviously are at the bottom, and it can be found on all of our socials, as well as the website found in the show notes. So with that,
and keep an eye out. We might be on somebody else's podcast talking about Prog Power. So
that is true. That is true. So we will post everything about that in the coming weeks. With that said, I am really looking forward to this. Let's jump in. We start off with Overture, and I don't think it's any surprise that this is a very symphonic intro filled with Gregorian chants, and then all of a sudden, about halfway through, the band kind of jumps in, and the song certainly picks up at that point. Not really sure much else needs to be said. This is kind of a standard intro track before we get into Nevermore, the first single that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, kind of like a throwback to the old Rhapsody albums of yore, with the symphonic intro. I mean, even Halloween before that. So yeah, just getting the table set for a heavy metal party. So I enjoy this kind of thing. Like, I think that sometimes it's great that you just come in all guns blazing, as I like to say. Shout out to Judas Priest. And like, you know, other times I like a little bit of drama. Like, let's you know, get the person a little bit interested. What's going to come? And I love, you know, I love symphonic style music with the, you know, the choruses and everything. It's very just, I guess, bombastic, to use a word that we may have overused in the tenure of this podcast, but I think it fits here. So yeah, just a fun little intro. Also good for, you know, when the band plays live and they need a little bit of a 2-minute intro before they take the stage. Perfect.
Did you think it was a good lead into Nevermore? And really, when it comes to this single, was it the right choice for the lead single on the album?
I think so. I mean, honestly, I kind of figured this was going to be my song of the week, and it stayed that way. And I'm glad to hear that you, at least I don't think, chose this. So, because I wanted there to be 2 different songs to pick. But I think familiarity won the day on this one. And I just have always really liked this song. They played it kind of early in their set last year when I saw them, and it got me really amped for a old Symphony X song. Love Mike Romeo's just guitar style. Like, the song just opens with it just unmistakably Romeo, which sounds kind of like a cologne. But you know, Russell comes in 15 seconds in, like we're off and running. Just a really, I think, like, heavy, but at the same time, melodic tune. I love the chorus. I think the chorus is so catchy. And the guitar solo towards the end of the song, with about 1.5 minutes to go, is very akin to some of the guitar solos we've heard on Divine Wings and Twilight and Olympus and albums from that era. So I completely kind of agree with you that this has a meld of old Symphony X and new Symphony X, and I like this song quite a bit. So I'm going to make it my song of the week. Let's give it a listen, and we'll come back and you can let us know your thoughts on this song. Sorry, but yeah, Nevermore, not my favorite band in the world, but probably one of my favorite Symphony X songs. So here it is.
Frigid breath falling in the cryptic dead. Curse the dark with a longing heart and a soul. You will rise again. On tragic wings I take flight. Bring on the night. Eyes of stone ripping, flesh from bone into depths unknown. From darkness into light. Nothing matters anymore. My streets ring hollow, bleeding nevermore. Nevermore. Can't let go. Your silence tells me all I need to know.
This was an interesting choice for your song of the week, in that I just didn't think you were going to choose it. I think that opening riff is like just so unmistakable Michael Romeo. As you said earlier, his guitars on this are just vintage Michael Romeo. The verses are kind of straightforward. They actually remind me of some of the material on the Odyssey, whereas the chorus is catchier than I remember. And the song itself is really not a favorite of mine, but it's definitely better than I remember it. And I think that the way I would describe this is kind of a good, safe opening track, a good, safe single. But I don't know that it's my favorite song by any means, although I have to say I like that last key change during the end of that tune. That reminded me a lot of what Dream Theater has done at different points throughout the year or throughout their career. An interesting single, but I think that there's better material on this album, and I think Underworld is one of those tracks. right off the bat, you can tell that the keyboards are playing a more prominent role on this track. And it's got a same kind of pacing to Nevermore, but I think there's a little bit of a gallop to this song that I like. Crystal clear production, both on the guitars and the drums. The verses have a really pronounced, angry Russell Allen vocal style, which is typically not my thing, but at the same time, he even does some harsh vocals on this, which I actually rather enjoy. It was just something that I was not used to. And parts of the song remind me of Inferno from the Odyssey, just in terms of the structure. But the chorus is fantastic. Russell is like a lot more emotional with those vocals, and with the keyboards behind it, I absolutely love the chorus. It's a kind of a mixed bag, but I actually think that this is one of the better songs on the album. There are elements of this, especially, that I just love.
Yeah, I feel like whereas, Nevermore had a little bit more of like an upbeat kind of melodic vibe to it, this is just very heavy. And I think that it's a nice dichotomy from that previous track. But then, like, when you get to the chorus, it comes back to kind of that smooth Symphony X chorus that, we've come to know and love. I like Nevermore a bit more, but I think this is another really solid tune, and it's a good time to bring up kind of the themes of the album. Romeo did an interview, and he said he doesn't consider this album to be a concept album, but he admits that there is a common theme. He said, we try to find something to key in on and get the juices flowing, and here the goal is to find something a little dark but with emotional content. I started looking at Dante and Orpheus in the Underworld, where he's going to go to Hades or hell to save this girl. So there's the theme of going to hell and back for something or someone you care about. So I enjoy that. I enjoy getting a little info on kind of the creative process. And it also is worth mentioning, just to go back to Nevermore, the usage of the number 3 by Dante is also referenced in the album. Nevermore has 3 syllables, a 3-note melodic phrase, and its verses contain 3 references to 3 songs from the band's third album, The Divine Wings of Tragedy. So that isn't something I probably would not have picked up on my own. So thank you, Wikipedia. I guess as long as we're dumping facts, also I'll say the album cover was created by Warren Flanagan, not to be confused with Walt Flanagan, to you Mallrats fans out there. The art includes different symbols for each of the 9 circles of hell mentioned in Dante's work, which I think is cool. I think this is it's a kind of a simplistic album cover, but it's cool because I think it really represents what the vibes of the album were going for. So I apologize for pulling up the Wikipedia article solely in the episode, and had a bit of an info dump there, but we carry on.
Well, very, very good stuff and very interesting to say the least. We move ahead to Without You, the second single from the album. This song blew me away. It starts off slow and melodic, and it really was a callback to those early days. The verses are almost like a vocal solo in many respects, where the vocals just lead the way, and I love the tonality of the vocals. The chorus is just absolutely incredible. It's melodic, it's catchy, it's beautiful. It's really a well-constructed song that isn't quite a ballad, but it's certainly not as fast or as heavy as the prior tunes. More than anything, I think that this song reminded me a lot of Circus Maximus, right down to the production. Like, everything about this screamed Circus Maximus to me. And the instrumental section reminded me of The Accolade, which is never a bad thing. It wasn't note for note, but it just reminded me of that style. The entire exercise this week was worth it to hear this song alone just multiple times. And there's a song that we have at the back end, which was kind of a runner-up song of the week for me, but this one stole the show. So I want to give it a listen, and I want to hear your thoughts on Without You.
Fighting tooth and nail, mind the sirens wail, and here comes the night. But the moment's gone without a warning or without a prayer. I've come undone, oh, fear and things unseen. Can I mend this broken dream? Sometimes I feel
So that was Symphony X's Without You, the second single from Underworld. Curious if you liked this as much as I did, because not that I forgot about the song, but it just never resonated with me a decade ago, and now I'm all for it. And I hope and somewhat expect them to play this live, and I'll be very happy if and when they do.
If I were to choose or was going to choose a song I was less familiar with, her song of the week, this would have definitely been a candidate for it. I think that right from the get-go, the acoustic guitar is such a throwback to that Divine Wings, Twilight kind of era of sound. And again, I could just be just like forgetting that they did this kind of thing on Paradise Lost or whatever. I just don't remember. But I agree 100% that this felt like very Accolade, Candlelight Fantasia, like a little bit of like the more mellow side of Symphony X. I think it definitely borders on ballad territory. I might even argue that it is something of a power ballad because it has kind of an emotional vibe to it. But man, I really like this song. Again, one of the things about this album that really stand out to me is I think that the choruses are really, really strong. And I don't know if Russell Allen like writes his own vocal lines. Cause I know like he's only really credited with co-writing one song, Run with the Devil. But I wonder, a lot of vocalists will at least like write their own vocal lines. And I'm wondering if that's something he does or if Romeo and LaPond who do, most of the songwriting do that for him. But the choruses are just, I think on almost every song are so catchy. And this is just another one of them, but it definitely has a little bit more of a mellow side to it. And I think that you're right. It seems like an obvious choice for a live track just because it's a little bit less heavy lifting, like, versus a Smoke and Mirrors, which I think involves everybody like playing super fast and hard. This is a nice kind of a break sort of tune, but it's also a good song. And I don't know if you mentioned it. This was the second single from the album. It's interesting because Mike Romeo did an interview saying he was against releasing singles because he thought the album was written to be a whole. So just kind of an interesting thought. But man, I thought I would remember a song like this better. I listened to it a bunch of times and it honestly felt like kind of new to me. So cool choice for Song of the Week. Definitely second your feelings about this one. And yeah, really good tune. And I think after two pretty heavy songs, I think it's placed well to kind of slow things down a little bit.
Yeah, and as we move ahead here, we get to a few tracks that I don't love as much, I guess, in Kiss of Fire to start. This is a really heavy, in-your-face tune. Again, a lot of contrast with this and Without You. Some more symphonic elements are found here, and the verses have a nice chug to them. Really reminds me of Inferno from the Odyssey. I heard that a lot, almost like note for note in places. The chorus is heavy. It's just not as catchy as the ones that have come before it. It's just kind of there to break up the tune, in my opinion. The chunky guitars sound great, but they just are a little repetitive on this. And I would say that of the songs we've heard so far, Kiss of Fire is probably my least favorite, and I'm not sure that it's that close.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I probably would agree with that. I like the higher and more aggressive Russell vocals on this one, especially in the chorus. This is just a real like heavy tune, and I think it has kind of it's, I don't know, I want to say mid-paced. It's a little bit faster than that, but it's closer to mid-paced than fast-paced, in my opinion, and I think might make for another. I mean, this, I think, is kind of what my issue is with the band live, is that they play a lot of songs like this that are like this kind of tempo, when I know they have like these really speedy bangers in the back pocket, and maybe it's just exhausting playing those kind of songs night in, night out. But I'm thinking maybe at Prague Power, make a little exception, bust out some of the fast tunes, because those are the ones that I always kind of gravitate towards. But this is a solid track. I don't think that you're being a real Karen with a CHAR by saying it's not your favorite song thus far. But
what about one with a
CH? Our
CH?
next track. Yeah.
This one starts off heavy too, Karen, but like at the same time, I actually just prefer where this song goes. It has a little bit more of a proggy feel to it, slightly less metal, slightly less heavy, whereas the riffs and solos kind of harken back to like something that you heard on Five with Egypt or something like that. There's also a touch of Pharaoh on this track from Divine Wings. I don't know if it's the theming to that like Middle Eastern flair or whatnot, but this is kind of an intriguing song to me, and I actually prefer it to Pharaoh quite a bit. The verses and the chorus just sound so different from each other that the contrast is great. I not my favorite song on the album, but pretty good and definitely a step in the right direction when you compare it to Kiss of Fire.
This was probably the biggest improvement, like from day 1 to day 7 or whatever for me. Like I went in thinking not much of it, maybe even thinking it as like a slightly better Pharaoh. I ended up liking it quite a bit more the more and more I listened to it. Definitely agree. There's a definite Middle Eastern vibe, especially in the chorus. Just a pretty solid song, like just as usual, just really tight guitar playing, and a really excellent drum work, I think, particularly on this track. But I like this, and I think that it's this song and Kiss of Fire were probably well placed, kind of in the middle, to kind of like give you a little bit of lull's not the right word, but I think they started out the album really strong with the first full length tracks, and I think that there's some really good stuff on the back end. So I think these tracks I think go well in the middle, and then we come over to Hell and Back, which is the I guess the epic of the album at 9.5 minutes. I ended up really, really liking this track. What were your thoughts on this?
I agree. It didn't feel 9.5 minutes. It actually moved very quickly. Very melodic start. I love the sound of those keyboards and the guitars together. And then when the verses kick in, the bass really begins to pop. And that's not something I've said before, but it really pops on this track for me. The vocal lines have this like bluesy, melodic quality to them. And then the song begins to kind of pick up and get heavier as it chugs along. The chorus might be my second favorite on the album. I think it's really good, and I love the keyboards. And I think this is really a nice example of where like that the angry Russell Allen vocals add a nice element to the tune because they're not overused, but when they are, they're very impactful. Great song, well constructed, and a really pleasant surprise for me.
This is just one of those tracks where Symphony X keeps it at that kind of mid-tempo, gate, if you will, and it's just an outstanding track. I think that the beginning of the track just immediately feels important and epic, like you're about to hear something maybe 27 minutes long, not 9.5. Like it really just has that kind of intro, like here we go, like get yourselves ready. And I love the symphonic orchestrations that the keyboards add to this. This is just one of those mid-tempo Symphony X songs that are outstanding. Great chorus. It actually kind of there's a little bit on the back half of this album that reminds me a little bit of Master Plan of all things.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, like a little bit of. I don't know if it's like I'm hearing a little bit of Your Land in Russell Allen's voice, or certain melodies or chords or whatever. But maybe that's like Symphony X, embracing their power side again. And I think they do on this album quite a bit. I think that they really blend a lot of power metal elements with their technical progressive style, which I think really meshes quite well on this album. And this song, I think, is a really perfect example of that. Definitely another one of my runners up for Song of the Week. This was one that I would end up really looking forward to as the week continued. Just a really outstanding track. And now that I'm listening to it again, I'm almost like, maybe I should have chose this. This is a really good song.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love this song. And I also love the next one, In My Darkest Hour. truth be told, I was a little disappointed at first that it wasn't a Megadeth cover. I kind of expected it to be, but then it wasn't. But ironically, there is a little bit of this thrashiness to it at the start. So I don't know if that's a homage or whatnot, but this was, if it wasn't to Hell and Back, this was by far the biggest surprise of the week for me. I love this song, and it would have been my runner-up for Song of the Week. The verses are slower, deliberate, almost doomy in the fact that they're just kind of slow, but then it picks up when it heads into the chorus. Some really solid vocals where Russell Allen is showing his range, and a chorus that you just kind of move to the beat. I really was impressed by this song. I also love the guitar solo. Not that I don't love all of Michael Romeo's solos. He's phenomenal, but this one really stood out to me. And it was just that blend of heaviness and melodicness that I really loved, and I thought this was a superb song. I'm wondering if it resonated with you as much as it did with me, because you'd have two songs here kind of on the middle end of the album that are just absolutely phenomenal for me.
Oh, I'm a big fan of this one too. There is a little riff that Romeo plays right before Russell Allen starts singing the chorus that it's just a small thing, but I love it. Just, there's something so infectious about it, and I just love it. And it's like the sort of thing where I would go back and listen to it again, just because it's so simple, but yet like my brain would not have been able to come up with that. Like, I just don't have a musical brain, which I guess is not something a guy who hosts a podcast should be admitting publicly. But I think you understand what I mean. Like, as far as writing music goes, like, not my forte. We'll leave all that to Nick. You keep doing what you're doing, Nick. We I know you're going to listen to this episode probably somewhere in late 2026, but when you get to it, just know that we're your biggest fans. But yeah, really, really great tune. I have a hard time deciding between this and the previous track, which one I like more. They're both really good, even though they do have a different vibe. I think this one has a little bit more of the heaviness to it. But again, just I continue to be impressed by the tracks on this album, and perhaps should have listened to it a little bit more closely when it was released 10 years ago. But hey, since the band hasn't released anything else since then, I feel like I'm right on time.
Listen, I had the same experience, and it was the same thing with Run with the Devil. I completely forgot this track existed. It was as if I heard it for the first time. That's how much I just didn't remember this. It's really proggy at the start. And what's odd to me, and I don't think anyone's ever made this comparison ever. If they did, kudos to you, because when I listen to those keyboards at the start of Running with the Devil, I hear Scar Symmetry. Yes, Scar Symmetry, and the way that they use their keyboards, not the vocals or anything else, but just the keyboard stylings. The verses are cool because I really think the phrasing of the vocal lines pop a lot. And the chorus, while not very heavy, is melodic and similar to, I don't know, I guess some of the, other songs on the album, in the sense that it's just a really good chorus, like you had mentioned earlier. Not a neoclassical vibe on this, definitely more of a modern vibe, but a memorable track with a memorable bridge. And I just love the vocals and the keys so much that I found this to be a really solid song as well. And like I said, one that I forgot about. So for my taste, 3 bangers in a row at the end of this album that are just worth noting.
This is one of those tracks where, like, if the chorus wasn't that great, I probably would have been like, all right, it's all right. But the chorus, again, like, it's just really, it ties the song together. I feel like we haven't mentioned Michael Pinella's keyboard playing as much as we probably should. This is a song where I think it's really on display. I actually, maybe just because of the week, reminded me of Power Quest in a way that, like, I just made me think like Steve would have appreciated the keys on this track, especially on the verses. I'm excited, it's so simplistic in a way, but I'm so excited to see a band where they are a band with a keyboard player, and like they don't exist without their keyboard player. Like, that guy is on stage playing, and I think that with this type of music, you can't replace that. So I'm looking forward to seeing Mr. Pinella in person, tickle the ivories, if you will. But yeah, another really strong song. I think these 3, I think, are, you could argue that these three versus Nevermore, Underworld, and Without You would be a pretty tough, choice if you had to pick a set of three tracks in a row from this album. But as of right now, I would say that this is a very well ordered album. Let's see if they can stick the landing with these last two tracks.
They definitely do. And one of the things I was going to mention is that even though I love Without You, it's obviously my song of the week. The back half of this album is so good. I mean, so good with these last two tracks, really the last five, that I would argue that maybe part of the reason I didn't like it was because when I heard Nevermore, I'm like, oh, same old Symphony X at that point, and then I just kind of disregarded the rest. But I'll be damned. Swan Song and Legend, two fantastic songs to end it. Swan Song was another one I highly considered to make my song of the week. It really reminds me of something that you would have heard on Twilight and Olympus or Divine Wings. It's almost ballady, keyboard-driven, slower paced, and then this whimsical chorus, which is really infectiously catchy. And then all of a sudden, about halfway through, the song gets a bit heavier, not really faster, but heavier. And I just feel like this is a prog metal fan's dream where every instrument gets a chance to shine. And I talked about that mix earlier and how I loved it. I'm not sure there's a better example of it than there is with Swan Song. I've come full circle on the album by this point, and Legend doesn't disappoint at all. And it goes back to what I said earlier. I just found this to be a transformative experience this week because I slept on this album completely, and I was 100% wrong. This album is great.
Very nice. I don't know how to follow that description, but yeah, right off the bat, I mean, where I was talking about keyboards on the previous track, this is more of a classic piano sound. I assume it was done on a keyboard. I could be wrong, but it sounds like a piano. And immediately I'm taken back to, particularly Olympus and New Mythology Suite, where it just has that really classical piano vibe, kind of leading the way. Another track that's, kind of on the longer side at 7.5 minutes, but never overstays its welcome. It's interesting, like the two softest songs on the album, like you mentioned, this and Without You, two of my favorites. Really good tune. Probably could have been the last song on the album. I think if they swapped the last two, I don't think anybody would have said anything, but I think it works well either way. But this is a really nice song, and I'm with you. I've completely, I can't really call it a 180. I've gone from just not caring about the album at all to really liking it, not disliking it, and then liking it. So it's kind of like, I guess it depends on if you think the true opposite of love is indifference, then maybe it is a complete 180. But the Philosophy Exchange is next week. Yeah, just a really nice tune. I'm at a point now where I'm like, if they played mostly songs from this album at live and then sprinkle in some of the old stuff, you won't get any complaints out of me. There's just so much good stuff.
I don't know that I'm going to do the 180 on Iconoclast or Paradise Lost, but we obviously will cover them in time. And when we do, if nothing else, I'm open to change because I've changed my opinion of this as well. They could play 5 or 6 songs of this album and I would not complain at this point. I don't know that I have the nostalgia feel, obviously, because I've done this 180 in the last 6 or 7 days, but I still say I think it's a really, really good stuff. And I liked Legend, the last track, just the same. And I'm going to talk about that, but you said, I could have seen the album end with Swan Song. Does that mean you didn't like Legend, or would you have just flipped the tracks?
No, I don't. I'm not even saying I would. I'm just saying it would have worked either way.
Gotcha.
Because a lot of times I think like softer ballads sometimes make for a good way to see out an album. I look particularly at like a Longing on Halloween's Chameleon album, or there's examples of that through the years. And then there's other albums where like you just end off with a banger, and that works too. So I think either way, I think just for the sake of not having too many heavy songs in a row, Swan Song probably was placed in the right spot, because I think you appreciate Legend more that you've taken a little bit of a break from the heavier tunes. And so I think this works well for the last track. super epic chorus, I think, which I think make it kind of the right choice of the heavy songs to be the final track on the album. But boy, a little bit of a small lull in the middle with Kiss of Fire and Karen, but like all the other tracks on this album are outstanding. Like, and I don't even think those two tracks are bad necessarily. I just think they're outshined by the rest of the album, and this is a really great choice to end things off. And I feel like you're always taking a chance naming a song Legend, because I feel like you really have to deliver, because that's just a word that has really strong connotations to it. And I think that they definitely did it here. And I'll ask you this. Before that, do you have any more thoughts on this song before I ask you this question?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. I'll just say that, again, I hear Circus Maximus on this track. It's got that modern prog vibe. I think the song is largely driven by the guitars and the bass. And after about a minute or so intro, the song goes off to the races, really demonstrating the Russell Allen vocal style that I love. It's kind of a blend of hard rock and prog, but it somehow works. I have just one minor complaint, and that's that I don't love the transition between the verses and the chorus. They sound different, but it sounds kind of abrupt, and I found it to be a little bit jarring, even though each one in their own right I loved. So again, I'm nitpicking here, but I didn't love the transition. But that being said, what a last 5 songs, man. Wow. Just really impressed.
Yeah, and we've talked about, like, through the years, some bands, like Halloween in particular, not so much now, they have 3 guitarists, but for the longest time they were a 2 guitar band, and Symphony X is a 1 guitar, 1 keyboard band. And there are a lot of times where I actually enjoy that a little bit more, because I love the dichotomy of those 2 instruments, because they like musically make a lot of the same types of sounds, but sound totally different. And I love that. The thing I was going to ask you was, did the band do themselves a disservice waiting this long to release their next album? Because I feel like the expectations of an album that comes out 10 or 11 years after the last one, I feel like you're just building and building and building. And it's kind of like, if they don't hit a grand slam, people are going to be disappointed. I mean, maybe that's kind of, I feel like in a way I might have felt that way about this album when it initially came out, because I might have still been in the headspace of like, is this band ever going to make Divine Wings 2 or Twilight and Olympus again? And it's like, maybe I needed to change my expectations and say, maybe I need to be more excited about this new brand of Symphony X. I think this has increased my interest in whatever their next album is going to be, but I'm wondering if the just that massive gap is going to be a disservice, or maybe the people's appetites are going to be so wet by that point that they'll just be like, hell yeah, Symphony X is back. I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
So the ultimate irony is that they may have waited too long in the general populace, of Symphony X fans. But for me, it's because they waited 10 years that I finally came around to this album, that it's like perfect timing. I'm ecstatic for the new Symphony X album. I can't wait. I really, truly can't wait to hear it. And I don't know that I would have said that even a year ago, based on the fact that I hadn't seen them live in a while. I hadn't listened to this album. But in 2025, me personally, I've done a complete 180 back to the fact that I love this band. I cooled off for about 20 years. Back, baby. I love this. I'm all there for it.
If this album came out this year, it would make my list, I think. I wasn't making lists in 2015, so like I don't even know where this would have landed at the time. But this would be on my list this year, at least as of late July.
Well, on the list, sure. The only question is how high. I mean, this might be really high on my list. That's how much I liked it.
Yeah, agreed 100%. So going full circle, now I ask you this. Symphony X, are they on Kimmel at some point next year?
You know something? Stranger things have happened. I thought did they get nominated for a Grammy at some point in 2015, or am I like making that up completely? I don't know, but
I don't know that sounds like it doesn't sound out of the realm of possibility. I will do a quick Google search on that.
I don't know the answer to that, but you know what? If I feel like this band has gotten more popular over the years, and so I can only hope and dare I say expect that this is going to get a rave review when it comes out.
Yeah, no, they've never been nominated for a Grammy.
Okay.
But that's a little. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see it happen. Now that Dream Theater and I think bands that are a little bit lesser known than just your Megadeths of the world. I think that they definitely have that. There's a possibility there.
Well, I am very, very curious to hear what you're going to give this on a scale of 1 to 10. And I asked the question because, A, we do it every week. But at the same time, I have to think that it's much higher than you initially expected. It certainly was for me.
I was going into this thinking to myself, like, if this makes it up to a 7.5, this is going to be a pleasant surprise for me. Well, it's even more pleasant than that. I'm giving it an 8.5. I just really enjoyed the hell out of this. It's never going to be with those three albums that we've discussed because, again, nostalgia and timing is a big part of it. But I'm willing to admit when I'm not going to say I was wrong. I just didn't really remember the album that well. I don't think I ever formulated a really, hard and fast opinion about it. But now that I've really taken the time to listen to it, Charles, shout out to you, my friend. He's been banging the drum on the newer Symphony X. We've been banging the drum on the older Symphony X. It turns out we both may have been right this entire time. I have to think your rating is in the ballpark of mine as well.
Yeah, it is. It's an 8. It lacks a little bit of nostalgia. There's two tracks that I'm not like totally in love with, but by and large, there's about 7 or 8 on this album that are just top notch. It's a solid 8 for me, and I don't know that I would have given it higher than a 7 off the top of the old dome, 2 weeks ago. But we are trending in the right direction. And as I said, the biggest compliment I can give it is I am ready to see or hear new material from this band in the coming weeks and months ahead. So cheers to them. And I look forward to seeing this stuff live. So that is wins all around as far as I'm concerned.
Yep. I'll wrap things up by quoting Michael Romeo talking about this album. He said, there was definitely an effort to do some of the things we've always done. We're definitely conscious of the fans. There's fans of the band that like an album like Iconoclast that's very heavy, and there's some that like the more progressive and very melodic kind of thing. And the other big thing, too, was just trying to really make it, listening-wise, cohesive as a whole record. The dips and the gaps and then the peaks, and really trying to think of the record as a whole, too. And I have to say, I think that the band accomplished that.
I am so glad you ended with that quote, because that's exactly how I felt when I listened to it. This was the perfect blend of new and old, and I'm there for it. And you know what? I don't know that I'm going to love those other 2 albums, but I'm going to give it a shot. And if there's elements of this album that I hear on those prior albums, I'll probably like it that much more. So very well said. Now,
yeah, I'm really, really glad that you chose this. And again, I think it makes for a good, counterpoint to last week's discussion on Twilight in Olympus. And I'm enjoying these back-to-back metal, what do we call it, exchange doubles. So I'm looking forward to the next one. And it's funny, I never stopped to think of like that you would pick an album that I like off a band I chose the previous week. And I'm going to keep that in mind going forward when you choose albums, going forward. I'll just little spoiler alert, the album I chose for next week, you won't be able to do a double for. So
all right,
we'll get to that at the end.
So it sounds like it's a one and done in that sense. But some news items I just want to bring up. Lots of bands talking about their new albums. So I'm just going to run through these quickly. Joey DeMaio has said that the new Manowar album they're working on new music. It's, quote, heavy and brutal. Not bad from a bunch of 70-year-olds, but I look forward to hearing new Manowar material. A band that I didn't even realize was still a thing, Into Eternity, is almost done with their long-awaited new album. I couldn't even begin to tell you the last time we talked about that band or even thought about that band. A band you'll be excited to hear, the new Anthrax album is almost done. They're mixing it now, so that's something to look forward to. May have to cover the new Anthrax on the podcast at some point just to hear your thoughts on that. And finally, Saxon's next album is scheduled for a release next fall. That's another band we have not covered in long form. I feel like we're overdue for, but new Saxon on the way in 2026. But I'd be remiss not to end with perhaps the biggest news of the week. Yngwie Malmsteen has launched a line of protein powder. Are you going to buy this and work out with your Yngwie Malmsteen protein powder?
I'm holding out on the Michael Romeo cologne first, and then I'll think about the protein. Based on this physique, you can tell that I'm not lacking in protein or silky riffs. So I think I'll be okay. But anything for a buck, I guess. Good old Yngwie. Just what a character. Maybe he'll make enough money that he can invest in some vocalists for his next album, and maybe a producer. I mean, that would be cool too.
I mean, when in Rome, right? But I am now very curious about your album for next week. I thought you were going to go with something completely different, but that clue has thrown me off completely. So what am I listening to next week?
Well, I have to ask, what did you think?
You had asked me if I had heard the new Bush album earlier this week, and I thought that there was a chance you were going to go with 16 Stone from Bush, being that it was timely, but clearly that's not the case, so I'm obviously wrong. What am I listening to?
I would venture to say that nobody has mentioned Bush and this band in the same breath ever, but I could be very wrong. But I'm going to take you back a little bit to a episode of the podcast that we did back in March of 2022, where you chose a mystery album, and it turned out to be a band called Sacrecy. And it was their self-titled album, and I believe, did we say that was the only album they ever released? It was kind of like a one-and-done Stradivarius, Sonata Arctica praise album. Do you remember the album that you initially had chose for that episode?
Yeah, did I choose Nightscape?
That's correct. And then we never mentioned it again, but I'm mentioning it now. This album, Symphony of the Night, was the only album released by this Swedish band. It came out in September of 2005, so it will be celebrating its 20-year anniversary this year. We're a little bit early, but I couldn't help myself to choose this. So, Justin had chosen this album as his mystery album initially, and he sent it to me, and immediately I put it on. I was like, oh, I know this one already. So he pivoted and went with the Sacrecy album, which I was not aware of. But I had this in my back pocket since then, always knowing that we would come back to it, because I've always really enjoyed this and thought this was a really weird, like, one and done. It's like Twilightning, except Twilightning made 3 albums. Like, this band made a demo, an album, and was done. And there's some really good stuff on this album, so I thought we would discuss it in the year of its 20th anniversary. I can only imagine it's been a while since you've listened to it, maybe since you were going to choose it. But
I haven't listened to this in a long time, but this is a great choice. And, sometimes we go with some more popular stuff. This is an obscure one that I think people are going to want to check out when we're done talking about it. I don't even know who's in this band. I'll be honest with you. I remember when this came out, but this is some obscure stuff. I'm gonna try to figure out who's in this band and see if we can get somebody to talk about it on the podcast, because I'm just curious at this point.
Are you a fan of Moon Safari?
I am. They were a prog metal band, a prog rock band. I'm actually very familiar with them.
Okay, well, their singer is the singer for Moon Safari.
That, and by the way, Moon Safari sounds nothing like Nightscape, so that's really interesting. Very cool stuff.
So I think this is going to make for an interesting discussion. It looks like the one of the guitar players is also in Moon Safari, and they have the same last name, so I'm wondering if they're brothers. This will be fun. I love kind of digging into some of the more obscure stuff, and I've listened to the album a couple of times this week, and it's better than I remember. So
really, okay,
should be. I always thought of it as like a 2 or 3 track album, but going back and listening to it again, I have different thoughts on it. So I'm excited to discuss this one. It should be fun, and it's not the Symphony of the Night discussion I think Keith had in mind. That'll come at some point, I'm sure. But this ought to be good. I wonder if we could maybe round up somebody from the band to talk about it, because I feel like it's a real this one had to just miss a lot of people's radars. I have a funny story about how I discovered this band. I think I mentioned in the past, but I'll tell that story next week when we talk about it. But yeah, I thought it would make for a fun discussion, and then we'll move on to our next request, which comes from our friend Adam in Denmark, who we're happy to have back in the fold again after he had a little bit of a health crisis. So welcome back. We will be talking about your album, and we'll reveal what that is next week.
Nice. I look forward to that. Excellent choice. It's going to make for a fun week. And again, if you want to make a request, if you want to hear our Dream Symphony X set list, consider joining the Patreon. And obviously, give us a like and a follow so other people can help see and find out about the podcast. It's been fun, my friend. 2 weeks of Symphony X. Next week, we go to what I'll just say is something a little bit different, but a lot of fun. So thank you for the next week's album. And enjoy the week, my friend. I will talk to you soon.
All right. Take care, buddy.